Now adjust the volume control so that the sound can be heard in all parts of the room.
This is the Protect Your Assets podcast.
Mr. Sandman,
You get the idea?
bring me a dream.
It's on the internet.
Make him the cutest that I've ever seen.
Go on.
Give him two lips like
It's like no cheese I've ever
and
tasted.
tell him that his lonesome
Here's the
nights
Sandman.
are over, Sandman.
If you've thought about what you're going to do when you stop working, we've got a really interesting topic today that I'm sure some of you out there will be pretty excited about. And the topic we're talking about is actually something very unique that my guest today is going to share with us. So this will be a great show. Stick with us as we talk about your next life and what you could do, and also learn about a very interesting subject. Welcome to Protect Your Assets. I am David Hollander. People around here, they call me the Sandman, and that's because I help my listeners sleep well at night by helping them protect their assets and make sure that they're doing what they can to pay less in taxes, make sure what they have pass on to their family, and of course, look at all those things that come from the government. We have a tremendous show for you today. My guest today is Sam Ball. He is the director and co-founder of Citizen Film. And we're going to talk about what if you wanted to make a movie, and what if you wanted to make a movie on a subject that was passionate to you, that you were very interested in. How would you go about doing that? So we're going to cover that this morning and how you get into that and what you do. Now let's get started. So we had quite a week this week again on Wall Street. The Dow was off just a little bit, 0.6%, not much. Year to date, we're still up 18.4%. S&P is still on a great run, up 1%. Year to date, up 27.7%. NASDAQ up 3.3% for the week. Big move. Year to date, up 32.3%. And the MSCI Index International up 1.8%. Year to date, 5.5%. 10-year Treasury holding in at 4.15%. One of the questions I had this week is where I see interest rates going. You know, I still think they're going to be going down. I think the Fed will lower rates one more time this year before it's over. And then I think next year we will get a couple reductions all the way out through 2026 with rates on the consistent downward spiral. Maybe another point and a quarter all in. But I'm not terribly optimistic about some big moves. As we head into the year end right now, the holiday season's underway. Can't even believe it. We're having Christmas parties and celebrating. Got to get back to the gym. Anyways, investors are having reasons to celebrate, of course, because the market's been performing, making new record highs. The bond market still has very favorable yields overall. And underpinning all this are the solid financials that we continue to see. This past week, we had some great data on manufacturing, on services, showing that November was a good month. Our economy is still expanding. And we had the big number yesterday from the jobs. We added 227,000 new jobs when the expectation was for 220. So slightly above what the expectation was, but that's a good number. And overall, unemployment is still very, very good in our economy here in the U.S. So things are looking pretty good for 2025. And as we look towards that, I expect consumers to continue to do what they're doing and supporting these lower interest rates for longer and increasing wage growth. So I got a question this week about all the uncertainty that's out there and how is that relating to the volatility index, the VIX. And you know, when you're thinking about the Fed, what they're going to do, the Trump administration coming in and all the uncertainty around that, the war or wars, if you will, that are out there right now. And of course, what if inflation starts to come back and rise with tariffs? These are some good questions that popped up. And so the question was, with all these things facing us right now, why is the VIX going down? And the VIX measures risk. And the second question was, why do you think it's relatively low right now? That's the VIX index overall. So the reason that the VIX index is where it is right now is, first, there was really an overcrowded trade that was going on. I don't know if you recall, but you know the election was uncertain. There was really no clear path of what was going to happen. And so when things are uncertain, the market gets a little nervous, gets a little jittery. We're going to talk about racing today. So I would equate it to driving a car at 10 tenths and you're going to in a corner and you're hitting the brakes and you're hoping everything hooks up and works. Otherwise, you're going to go off the track. It's something like that. So that's what's going on right now in the economy when there's uncertainty. And so a lot of people were thinking that we were going to have some problems with the result. It was unknown. So a lot of folks were thinking the market was going to go down from the numbers where it was right before the election, which, again, we've had a pretty good year overall last couple of years. So what that did is that created a trade in options where you're predicting something that's going to happen in the future. And so you can buy an index option, which trades the VIX, okay? And so they had a November, December option at that time, and the spread became inverted because there was too many people essentially putting money at the other side of the trade, which was the downside. That didn't work out, right? Because there was a result, and it was from again, market perspective. That's what I'm talking about, just the market. The market viewed lower taxes and more corporate favored, based on who's stepping in. Again, this is all the market. And so that essentially unwound that trade. And so what you saw is some short volatility overall. You saw the trade start to unwind. And what this did was create extreme pressure on the VIX, essentially staying low. And that's why we're still at a lower level, is because the overall perspective, like I just talked about at the beginning of this, was fairly positive for the market. Now, you add to that, the second question is, why is it still low, given, again, markets hitting all-time highs? And the latest rally on the S&P 500 is being supported or amplified by what I'll call the short volatility trade. And these are derivative dealers basically taking the other side of being short, and they're hedging those positions with what we call longer range S&P 500 trades. And so when you have, again, an inefficiency occurring, that tends to drive pressure. And so that's why we're seeing low volatility right now on the VIX, which traditionally measures higher when markets are at all-time highs. But again, like I said at the beginning of all this, thank you for the question. It was a good one. But as I said at the beginning, I think 25 is still looking pretty good, shaping up well, specifically when you look at the things that we can look at, which are labor, production, and manufacturing. That all seems to be fairly positive. All right, so now here's what we're going to do. We're going to switch. I would like, first of all, to introduce my guest, Sam Ball. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Dave. Long time, first time. It's great to be here.
All right, good. So I met Sam. I was introduced to this film that you're making, which is called Racing on the Spectrum. And Sam, just tell us a little bit, because we're going to go to a break real quick, but tell me a little bit just about what is this subject about?
Yeah. So we are Citizen Film. We're a documentary production company, a nonprofit organization here in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Been doing that for more than a couple decades now. And one of the films we are currently making profiles 3 early career professional race car drivers who are on the autism spectrum. And each of them believes that some of the unique traits they have that come with autism are superpowers when they're in a race car. So it's a coming-of-age story. We'll be following these drivers for a couple of years. So you're layering the drama of a racing season with the drama of life in your early 20s as a young adult on the autism spectrum, looking for the things we all look for, love, acceptance, and stability.
Absolutely. It's really amazing. So let me throw the website out there, citizenfilm.org. You can go there and check this out. It's called Racing on the Spectrum. We're going to come back and we're going to talk a lot about this. What if you're about to retire and you wanted to make a movie about something you were interested in? How might you go about that? What are some of the hurdles you'll face? Who are some people you could talk to? What are some options that are out there for you right now? We're going to talk about how you might do that. And then, as Sam was just mentioning, we're going to talk a lot about these spectacular athletes. When you start to learn about their stories and what they've done and what they've accomplished and where they're going and how it relates to their superpower, I think you're going to be amazed. It's quite a story. So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. Stick around. So much more to come. You're listening to the Protect Your Assets show with David Hollander, the Sandman. That's me. We'll be right back.
Take the first step toward reaching your financial goals and get the information that can help you live a confident retirement. That first step is going to pyaevents.com and signing up for our next free event. That's pyaevents.com. Now back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
Welcome back. I'm David Hollander, also known as the Sandman, and that's because I help my listeners sleep well at night by helping them protect what they've worked so hard for. And that reminds me, if you're thinking about retiring at any time in the near future, maybe you've thought about making a movie. And so today we're talking about how you might go about doing that, and then also a subject that's very important and how this person who's with me this morning has gone about making something that's pretty spectacular. So Sam Ball is with me this morning. He is the co-founder of Citizen Film. And also the director of Racing on the Spectrum, which, of course, racing is near and dear to my heart. So we're going to get into this right now. So, Sam, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Dave.
Welcome. So let's talk about, how did you get into making films?
Well, I was lucky because I knew really early on that what I wanted to do was make films. I loved films from an early age. And I remember as a kid not really playing around with cameras, but not really kind of knowing what is a genre of film, before I'd taken any classes or really knew that much. And every film idea I had was about just getting a camera and documenting the world. And okay. I've never had a really strong...
Now, because we're probably about the same age, back then we didn't have an iPhone.
No iPhone.
So what did you have, a Betamax camera?
What did you have? I've had
was
whatever.
it old film, with the reel?
Yep, that too. But really it was like whatever was cheap and available. And then...
Were you one of those kids running around with whatever that camera looked like, just grabbing scenes of things?
At times, at times. Although, I've always been pretty project-driven, so for me it's about the story. What story can we tell? Like what's a great story that sort of really excites me and interests me? And then, we're on a show called Protect Your Assets. I've always been kind of risk averse. So for me, making films is really about just putting one foot in front of the other. Like what is your passion, and then how do you, in a practical way, make it happen? Okay.
So let's start with your journey. So you like to film things. You're interested in that. Walk me into to make a film. What's the first thing you should think about, and how do you build upon what you're good at?
Yeah. Well, first off, I know a lot of your listeners might be pretty deep into a career and pretty successful at that career. And maybe you've always wanted to make a film, and you're closing in on retirement age, and maybe this is the time to do it. So I would bet that a lot of your listeners have transferable skills, and I think making films is probably not that different from any other type of endeavor, or in our case, nonprofit endeavor. It's really, being able to talk to people about what you care about is really important, and just putting yourself out there and seeing what comes back. And probably some of the same financial skills you talk about with your listeners are applicable to filmmaking. So if you have those two things, that's a pretty good start.
Now, do organizations like yours have any sort of programs where someone had skills, say as a CFO, could step into a project like one of yours, help you, and then learn what they're interested in as well? And
absolutely. I mean, it takes a village. So projects often have a structure where there's a core group, like, because it's my job. We're a staff of 11, and we're able to do this full time. Yeah. We can really focus. And then each project has a group of people who are volunteers who bring skill and passion and relationships into the project. So that's a pretty typical configuration.
Okay, well, great. All right, again, so it's citizenfilm.org. That's how you learn more about what Sam's up to. Let's switch now to this new project you're working on, Racing on the Spectrum. I was introduced to this because, as most of you know, I love race cars. I love everything related to race cars. I race cars. You know that if you listen to the show. Happen to know some race car drivers. But I had no idea that there were 3 individuals racing different types of cars. We'll talk about that today. I'd like to start out first with what's called a GT4 class. These are typically your really nice performance cars you see on the street, like really nice Porsche 911s or Ferrari. Nice Ferraris, Lamborghinis running around. You see these on the streets, McLarens. These are high-end sports cars that are expensive, but they're really capable of being a race car. And so we call this class a GT4 class because typically that production car can be put on a racetrack with some slicks and some little modifications, and you can go out and run some pretty good times. So I learned about this through a fellow who's in my club, Matt Latucci, who, Matt, I believe, is a producer involved in this somewhat as well.
Yeah, so Matt is one of the core people who's been driving this thing, pun intended.
Yeah, because Matt's a race car driver.
Yeah, Matt's a race car driver, and
he also has another job, so he does something else.
That's right. Yeah. And that's how these things get made, is people really caring, rolling up their sleeves, raising some money. It's all tax deductible.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, just bringing people together to make things happen. That's what it's about.
So Bobby's one of the stars in this movie. There's 3 of these fellows who are incredible athletes. And again, going to the website, citizenfilm.org, you can read about each one of them and see what's going on here. But Bobby is racing a McLaren, GT4 McLaren, and you can see some footage on what's going on. It's pretty cool. Tell us a little about Bobby. How did you find Bobby, and how did he come into the story?
Yeah, well, I was, like how a lot of good things in life happen, was having a drink with my friend Kevin O'Connor, who is a lifetime racing enthusiast and the executive producer of the film. And we were just batting ideas around. Kevin said, I've been racing and really into cars my whole life. Mm-hmm. And I'd really like to, and I've loved films pretty much my whole life. And I would love to see us make a film where we can tell a great story, do some good in the world, and have it be about racing. And Dave, we're on KNBR. I'm a sports nut. I love sports, but racing is a sport I had never really thought about.
Is that right?
It's,
okay.
It's like it's on the background on TV, and I'll watch for a little bit. Like if there's a score, I'll watch something.
Sure.
If there's a competition, but I hadn't thought about racing a whole lot. And as we were kind of thinking about things, I went back. I was at my desk, and I have a niece who's on the autism spectrum, who's about 15 years younger. She's little, 15 years younger than our drivers, and she has that, like we all as humans have a thrill-seeking gene, and she has that like over the top thrill-seeking gene. And I remember just watching her. I can't remember, it was like on a scooter or something, like just how fast can I go? How fast can I turn a corner? And just on a whim, I Googled racing autism. And and instantly there's a bunch of stories about a NASCAR driver named Armani Williams, who's open about his diagnosis of autism, early career, young NASCAR driver. And then another click away, there are 2 other early career professional drivers who are also on the autism spectrum, and each one of them talks about traits that they have from autism that they believe makes them better drivers. The ability to process sensory information, all the things that happen in your body when you're in a race car, and being able to combine that with processing a lot of data from the dashboard and seeing around them and figuring out what other drivers are doing and looking for patterns and hitting those patterns and being able to do all of those things all at the same time.
And that's racing. It is.
That's racing.
It's also sensory in that you feel the car. You get feedback that you feel all throughout your body. That's giving you input. There's also, I call this sort of spider sense where, I can't see behind my right, where you blind spot in your mirror. If you think about that, there could be a car sitting right there. Yeah. And as you're going to a corner at 130 miles an hour, you might not want to hit that person. Yeah. So, you got to be aware of that space differential too. So again, these are unique traits that your athletes possess phenomenal skill at, obviously, when you watch this.
Yeah. So when Kevin and I heard about this story, we were like, let's go. Let's wave that green flag.
And how did you connect with Bobby?
Well, so, again, like the Google search, these three guys pop up instantly. And a lot of the work of documentary filmmaking, like a lot of the work of every profession, every listener of this show has, is about relationships with people.
That's right.
And, it always... your film and documentary is only as good as the relationships you establish with the people in those films, at least for the kind of story we make, which is about finding common bonds of humanity and leveraging the power of story to bring people together, make people more aware, build the kind of world we all want to live in.
Sure.
When you have that as a goal, you really want to build strong relationships and collaborate so that we look at these three young men and their families as co-creators of the project. Gotcha. We really want this to be about what story do we want to get out into the world for people to understand autism a little bit better, and for people to embrace that we all have unique strengths and differences that make us stronger as people and as a society when we embrace those unique strengths and differences.
Excellent. Well said. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about more about the subject, of course. And given the fact that we're getting close to the year end, and as I mentioned at the start, the market's doing pretty well. You may be sitting on some fairly large gains in some stocks, and you want to know how you could contribute to something like this on a tax-favored basis. We're going to come back and talk about that, because this is the time of year when you want to be thinking about that and doing something positively with what you've done. So when we come back, we'll talk more about that. Again, you are listening to Protect Your Assets. I am David Hollander, the Sandman. We'll be right back.
Take the first step toward reaching your financial goals and get the information that can help you live a confident retirement. That first step is going to pyaevents.com and signing up for our next free event. That's pyaevents.com. Now back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
We're back. I'm David Hollander, also known as the Sandman, and you are listening this morning to Protect Your Assets. We're talking about what you might do when you retire, and today we're talking about making movies. So my guest this morning is Sam Ball. He is the co-founder of Citizen Film. You can find them on the web at citizenfilm.org. And his latest production that he's working on, he's the director of this story, is called Racing on the Spectrum. And we've been talking this morning about what that means and who these incredible athletes are. So, Sam, again, good morning. Welcome. Thanks for being here today. Let's get into specifically one of your athletes, Armani, and his story. I think it's a fascinating story. Tell us a little bit about his story.
Sure. So Armani Williams is a NASCAR driver. He is the first NASCAR driver ever with an open diagnosis of autism. And he's also one of a handful of African Americans racing in NASCAR. So it's, he's a really interesting story on a couple of levels.
It's a remarkable story. It really is.
Yeah.
Especially from a racing perspective. I mean, he's now, next year he'll be in the Xfinity Series, which is straight up NASCAR at a very high level. And from a driver's perspective, it takes a lot to get to that position. So I know through what I saw of your film, there's quite a story behind him and his family and autos and cars and his dad and it just whole connection through generations that now they have this athlete who's driving at a very high level.
Yeah.
And has a pretty bright future ahead. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So Armani's family, like a lot of African Americans, came from the South to the Midwest because jobs were available in the auto industry, and life in the rural South was pretty rough. And his great-grandfather got to Detroit through, I believe, a cousin, found a job at Ford, and discovered, or he knew, but others discovered that he had a lot of mechanical ability and skill. So he worked a number of different jobs at Ford. And after work, he started fixing people's cars because he realized that, if you wanted to get your car fixed, you'd have to drive to a white neighborhood and probably get ripped off. And there was a lot of need in the neighborhood, so he'd be the guy you'd go to if you had a problem with your car. And after a number of years, he realized he could have a full-time business this way. So he established a mechanic and auto body shop in his neighborhood, and that set the family on its path. Armani's grandfather took over the business, and his dad, grew up working for the business and realized this is not what I want to do. Great American story, was able to go to college. He's now a pharmaceutical executive and has a second full-time job as Armani's manager.
Which is great. It's so great to see.
And so there's a lineage of cars and talking about volunteering, his grandfather in his latter years while Armani's dad was working was able to drive Armani all over the place. And NASCAR, kind of saw his times in amateur races.
Yeah, so let's talk about, from listeners' perspective, racing is a very difficult sport.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talent in terms of people that are good at what they do. So we have an individual here who's exceptional in terms of his skills. And again, this comes from his autism, and that there's characteristics that he has that make him an exceptional driver, athlete at what he's doing. So he's at this level where he's getting noticed because of his lap times and slower automobiles, if you will, getting opportunities to step into faster, more capable cars that cost a lot more money because this is not an inexpensive sport.
Yeah.
And now he's at a level which essentially is at the top.
Yeah.
With a really incredible future.
And how
old is he?
That's right. I believe 24 years old.
Okay.
And I also want to make sure, we're not painting too rosy of a picture, and I'll give you an example because of the way he was driving in amateur competition. He was noticed, and NASCAR, which is an incredibly hard to get, incredibly prestigious thing.
That's easy to say.
Wanted to send him to North Carolina to, up his game, but also learn about the business side of how are you going to be a professional race car driver.
Yes.
And typically, this is the thing that sets drivers on their path
Super important point. You can have really good, talented drivers, but they need another skill, which is a people skill. And the ability to talk to people and have them essentially support you. Yeah. Because if you don't have that too, the likelihood of you getting to this sort of a level is I don't even want to say it's like being, Shaquille O'Neal playing basketball, but it's kind of like that level. Like there's literally a very small percentage of the population that will ever see this, no matter how good they are. That's the reality. So that's exceptional. Again, given that. That Armani is coming from where what he's doing. It's just incredible.
Yeah, that's right. And then where it gets challenging is because of some of the challenges Armani has that are also autism related, obstacles to just being able to, outside of a race car, sometimes keep an even keel, focus in certain situations. There are a range of disabilities come with autism. His family and he decided at that time as a very young adult that he wasn't able to accept spending a year, by himself and on the circuit, and with basing out of North Carolina to receive training. So he wasn't able to take advantage of that opportunity, and instead they worked out with NASCAR that he would race in a Canadian NASCAR series, which is a professional circuit, but in Canada, much harder to make a living that way.
Sure.
And so it was a more circuitous route than it might have been because of autism-related challenges and disabilities, of just needing that support system of your family as a very young man, which
right.
If you do not have disabilities, you would say yes to this opportunity to base in North Carolina and get your career launched.
Right.
So I think it's really important to say that part of our story, tracking these guys for really important 2 years of their career, and we're just at the beginning of this journey, is really about overcoming some of the challenges that come with autism-related disabilities, and also the stigma of autism outside of the racing circuit. And as you well know, racing gives you a community of support.
That's right.
And so part of the story is about how important that is.
And that's something that, being in a club of race car drivers, we can come from very different backgrounds, perspectives. But when we go to the track and you get in a car and you're all focused on your time and, the tweaks you can make to the suspension and the tire compound and the braking, all those things that we learn. Yeah. And then how that's what you talk about. Yeah. And so that everything else sort of goes away, and this is the subject for today, right? Yeah. So that's the uniqueness of auto racing, like any sport, I guess, when you're really good at what you're doing. Let's talk about something right now. It is end of year. You may be sitting on some pretty large gains in some stocks. Maybe you're interested in this subject. Maybe you'd like to help with the creation of this project. I would really encourage you to do something. Go to citizenfilm.org. When you get there, you'll see. Hopefully, you land. When you land, you'll see the Racing on the Spectrum banner. If you don't, there's a little arrow at the top left or right where you can click through the different films that Sam's involved in. But this one, particularly Racing on the Spectrum, you'll see it, and then just scroll down and you'll see there's how to contribute. And why I want to bring this up today is you can donate your stock. So if you're sitting on a very low basis and you really weren't going to sell it anyways, and you'd like to get a tax deduction because Sam's organization is a 501c3, you can literally transfer that stock over to Citizen Film. They'll sell it and use that money to do what this project's all about, which, again, you can read more about. And Sam will be more than happy to share information with whatever makes you happy on the subject, because there's a lot to learn. It's really quite an interesting subject. There's a way to contribute. It's in orange. It says how to contribute, and there is an email there where you'll speak with Sarah and how you can connect with her at racing@citizenfilm.org. That's her email. You can also call us as well. You can call 866-PROTECT. We're more than happy to connect you and explain how you might want to do this and why you might want to do this. As you know, we do taxes and we do finance, of course. And again, that's 866-PROTECT. But check it out. This would be a great thing to think about towards the end of the year about how you could do something good with something that you did that was good and you just don't know what to do with it. So check it out, citizenfilm.org. When we come back, we're going to talk about Austin, who is driving another type of car, which really kind of blew me away when I saw this happening. We'll talk about his story and what he's doing when we come back. A lot more to come. Keep it right here.
If you missed any of Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, all you have to do is go to pyaradio.com, where you can download or listen to our latest shows for free. Just go to pyaradio.com on your computer or mobile device when it's most convenient for you. That's pyaradio.com. Now back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
Welcome back. I'm David Hollander, also known as the Sandman. You are listening to Protect Your Assets this morning. We've been talking about making movies, making films. Maybe you're thinking about your next career after you leave what you're doing right now, and what will you do? Will you make a movie? Well, this morning, my guest, Sam Ball, who is the co-founder of Citizen Film. We've been talking about his latest project that he's working on and how you might want to get involved in something like that. So we've been talking about Sam's new project. You've been working on it now how long?
Well, we're about a year into shooting, and we hope to follow these drivers' career, professional race car drivers, for another couple of years, because it's coming-of-age story.
And the film is called Racing on the Spectrum. There are 3 athletes who are featured in this film. This will be a full-length film. It is quite a film. I was fortunate enough to see part of the footage that has been completed, and it's pretty incredible. So if you are a parent, maybe who has a child with autism, Sam, how might this be of interest to somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about autism is if you know one autistic person, you know one autistic person. But a real important part of working with people on the spectrum, with kids on the spectrum, is a lot of times kids will have near to completely obsessive passion for something. That is something that a lot of people on the autism spectrum share as a trait. And it's all about converting your obsessive passion for something into relationships and skills that are transferable into other parts of life. So our message isn't every kid on the spectrum needs to take up an incredibly dangerous sport. Right. Our message is find your passion, and then this is as much a film about parenting a young adult as it is the story of these young adults. So what kind of support is required? What does parenting look like? I think a lot of people with kids on the spectrum will be able to see themselves.
Yeah, I thought your project did a great job of showing the parents and involved with the kids, and there are 3 different stories. Yeah, and I think about Austin's story because his dad, you can relate to these people, and I certainly related to Austin's dad sitting on the couch and talking about their story and how they were, literally almost mortgaging things, right, to make this happen for their kid because of the joy that came from seeing him perform. Yeah,
the joy, and then the fact that once you've found your passion and you're able to build on that passion, you can learn a lot of life skills that are transferable to having what we all want, great relationships, love, independence, security, through whatever that passion is. And that's not going to work for every kid on the spectrum, but it's going to work for a lot of kids. And one of the lessons from these 3 stories is take the stigma out. Like a lot of the barriers they faced is because of the stigma that other people have when somebody doesn't act like the other 98% of the people around them. Right. Maybe they don't look you in the eye. Maybe they can't sit still. Maybe they get frustrated by certain things that for many of us are just part of life. Well, how do we build towards a more inclusive society where we embrace that everyone has unique strengths and skills to contribute? And how do we create a world so that people get the support they need to live a fully productive, happy life? Absolutely. And so that, this time of year again, how would you support something like this? Well, it's really easy. You can call us, 866-PROTECT, and we'll show you how at this time of year you can take your stock or your appreciated assets or a retirement account or something that you don't really need and you've wondered what you're going to do with it because, let's face it, you may not need it. And at the end of the day, if you want to benefit something like this and help now and see some results now, you can do it, and you can take a tax deduction for it, and you can help with something that's very important get done in society. So if you want to learn more about that, call us, 866-PROTECT. We're more than happy to help, 866-PROTECT. You can also learn much more about this film by going to citizenfilm.org. Again, looking for that Racing on the Spectrum link that they have there with all the information that's there. Quite a remarkable story. Sam, thanks so much for being here today and sharing the story with us and our listeners. Really appreciated it. It's great to be with you, Dave, and as a longtime listener, it's awesome to be in the where it all happens here.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thanks for, again, and sporting your Giants jersey. Appreciate that, too. So I'd like to give a big thanks this morning to our team for putting together a very fascinating, interesting show. We've got Dylan back there and Adrian and, of course, my executive producer, network manager, Kevin Renfer, and in the studio, Kyle. Thank you, everybody, for a great show today, because without my team, I'm just another pretty voice on the radio. You have been listening to the Protect Your Assets show. I am David Hollander, the Sandman. Go out and make the rest of your life the best of your life.
Investment advisory services are offered through Liberty Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. The strategies mentioned are not suitable for everyone. The information expressed does not consider your specific situation or objectives and may not be appropriate for all investors. Past performance is not indicative of future results. To better understand the risk associated with investing and how it reacts to different market conditions, listeners should always consult with their qualified investment professionals, financial advisors, legal or tax specialists, and conduct their due diligence before making any financial decisions or taking any action. The legal information provided on the air is not intended to substitute for callers hiring their lawyers to advise them about personal legal matters. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Liberty Group LLC paid for the following program, and the host's views and opinions do not represent those of the station or its ownership. California Life Agent number 048569. Persons engaging the services of one affiliate of Liberty Group LLC companies should be aware that each company is operated separately. You're listening to the Protect Your Assets Radio Network.